something bad to us, we are going to do things to you that have never been done before.
We the people tell the government what to do. It doesn't tell us. We the people are the driver. The government is the car. And we decide where it should go and by what route to do. We the people are free. And I hope we have once again reminded people that man is not free unless government is limited.
Up there I am, hiding down the bloody bottom. How are you, folks? Hope you've had a good weekend. Life, the universe, and everything has gone well for you. And I trust you didn't get washed away or melted away in your part of the world. Washed away, I dare say, at the moment would be the biggest issue confronting most people, or frozen your bits off. I believe that it has been terribly chilly in certain places. And in fact, only a few days ago, Skipper Pete, God love him, up in Ingham, sent me a thermometer check where it was 8 degrees. 8 degrees. It was about 8:30 at night, 8 degrees in Ingham. My Lord. Bloody chilly up that part of the world. And ordinarily, you would think that would be a nice part of the world to go this time of year to stay warm. And hello to my good mate Michael, who I believe has fled Melbourne on the big silver bird with no propellers and gone to Cairns, leaving the wife and children at home in Melbourne. Michael, I know it's for work, brother, but what are you thinking? What are you thinking? Gomez, nice to have you in first of all, early today too, because I had the show up a bit earlier, about 20 to 5. Debs, lovely to have you in, and the lovely Connie as well. I hope your other half, the Pipe Master, is doing all wonderful things. And Thomas, did you tell your mother that the show was on tonight? That's the question. I've got to figure out that opener yet. Maybe next weekend. Tony, marvellous man in the house too. And our birthday girl of last week, Aussie Sue, and also one of our mods. Hope you are doing okay out there on Russell Island. Beautiful part of the world. And as Aussie Sue always says, and I should be always saying it too, please remember, give the show a thumbs up if you can. In fact, Skipper Pete, mentioning him, he sent me some screenshots the other day. He was able to hype the show. Now, none of us, including Vince, knows how or why this hype thing works, or when it comes up, or why it only comes up occasionally, or sometimes it doesn't come up at all. But if you get the opportunity, could you give us a hype or give us the thumbs up and subscribe, folks? Subscribe. We're trying to we have upped our subscriber level quite significantly, I've got to admit. And we are growing a few more every day. But there is another milestone we'd like to reach, if you like, and that's because we're migrating everybody across essentially to the one channel. So yes, like and subscribe. Make sure you are watching the YouTube channel, youtube.com/VOF, and subscribe to that. There is the Voice of Freedom channel. You can subscribe to that. And then on Rumble, if you want to watch it that way, you can watch Voice of Freedom there too. Make sure you subscribe there. Every little bit helps. G'day, Gay. G'day, John. Hope you are well and enjoyed your weekend. Andrew, trust things are all right in the ridge for you, brother. And although it's been a bit wet down your way, that's going to make getting underground a little harder. David Icke says the movie Disclosure Day is a psyop. Well, there you go. I haven't seen it yet. I know a few of you have, and you've been very, very good in not telling me what your thoughts are just yet. Had planned to go and do all that tomorrow, but I've actually been a bit unwell for the last couple of days and don't feel comfortable doing a big drive up to the Sunshine Coast and going to the movies and doing a big drive back down. So just a little unsettled in the tummy for some reason. Don't know what I've poisoned myself with, but I seem to have done a pretty good job of it. Disclosure Day is writing pretty reasonable numbers, I think, on its opening weekend. They were looking for, I think they were looking for 75 to 100 million US on the opening weekend for it. They would be very happy with that. I don't know how much it costs to make. Most of it's CGI, I gather. So you've got to wonder how much that costs to make. But anyway, we'll see. Daniel Weir, I hope you're battling on all right, brother. I've seen a few of the troubles you've gone through today, and I know a man who knows about those big yellow poles, and more particularly the little plugs that they put in the place where they put those little plugs. If you need a hand, you want to know what you're doing, but can be done just between you, me, and the gatepost. You'll know what I'm talking about. Deb, I hope you are well, the lovely Deb Shippard. And who else do we have in the house that I haven't said hello to? Scotty the News. Been a little while since I've seen your head in there, although it's been a little while since I've probably cruised the entire length of the chat. The lovely Sunflower, I think, did I see her pop up? Maybe I didn't. I'm imagining things. Clayton Bear is floating around. Thank you for the heads up, brother. Here is Wayne, and if you haven't already done so, please get in quick. Book your, well, it'll need to be a caravan or tent spot at the Stony Creek Bush Camp and Caravan Park coming up on the 27th, 28th, and 29th. Here it is. I'll put this little sign up, and I'll take that off. There you go. There's Wayno's thing coming up, and Vince and I will be there. There'll be a few other bodies turning up that aren't really associated with Vince or I, or the things that we talk about, although Tim Dwyer will be turning up. He's going to be speaking about hydrogen and the great advantages that his system has. Interestingly, there is some other developments on the hydrogen front. I guess I can pop to that very quickly. That, my friends, is a hydrogen-powered Toyota, and that will be racing at this year's Le Mans, I'm led to believe. Now, if you're going to go and bring something out new and see how well it goes, the experimental class at Le Mans is exactly the place to do it. And we've seen some pretty radical cars there in the past, including a three-wheeler that a mate of mine was very fortunate to be part of the team for. That, too, was a Toyota-driven spec. It was built like a dart from memory a few years ago. And they ran that a couple of years at Le Mans. Turns out it maybe wasn't as groundbreaking as they'd hoped. But this thing certainly looks like it might be fairly well groundbreaking. Now, it doesn't have a hydrogen cell inside it, which you pull out and replace. This thing is actually using an engine that essentially is using seawater, running off seawater, producing hydrogen, burning it, and running it. So watch out for Le Mans. You will see all manner of weird things popping up there. Be interesting to see how that goes. All the same. Now then, Bulls Nuts, g'day to you too. Hi, Pipe Master. Nice to have you in the house. I did say hello to Clayton. Paul Orchard, the man himself. The lovely Rachel. Got a bit of politics. I know you don't like talking about it, but I got something for you, Rachel. I want to talk to you after the show tonight. So I'm going to give you a call, and hopefully that other lady that you've been speaking to about that thing you girls have been speaking about. Does that make any sense to you? Excitement. All right. Straight to the ads. Yeah. Get on to Wayne straight away. Book up. We'll see you there. It's going to be flash. Robert, I hope you are doing well. I hope your foot's doing all right. And let me know if you're looking for a third to go north with you. The black sheep who I was going to call over the weekend and try and catch up with, but I seriously was in no fit state to catch up with anybody. I'm pretty hopeful he's still around my neck of the woods. I haven't seen him yet, but the plan is to catch up with him, and he is got every intention in the world of shooting his way north and going to Cape York, which is where I believe you're headed. Going to look forward to your photos, Rob. Just saying. But if you're looking for a third, he might be interested, or a fourth, or a fifth, or a ninth, whatever you've got. You might be going on a full crew. You might be full up. All good. Just thought I'd throw it out there. Hello, the lovely Sandai. Just had the vets in. Got a very sick donkey. Tia. Oh. On a drip. I hesitate to make drip jokes around donkeys, sick donkeys particularly. But, well, I hope Tia gets better sooner rather than later. But thankfully that You know, she's very fortunate and lucky to have you and Baz in her life, and everybody else, the volunteers who work with you there too at the Donkey Sanctuary. So, yeah, I hope she pulls through. And much love to you and yours, Sandy. God knows we love you lots. What that is in the house, he's got a throbber, folks. Ladies, I just want you to know he has a throbber. It was throbbing this morning. When he got up, he went to the hospital. They relieved it somewhat when he went to the hospital, and that must have meant that they took quite a lot of bandages off his foot and let the blood go where it needed to go, a little less inhibited. But anyway, the throbbing stopped, and he's now been rewrapped and is back home enjoying a nice clean bandage on what remains of his left foot. So I hope you're doing all right, brother. I know you're doing all right. We spoke earlier today. And I'm sorry about tomorrow, but we will see. And for Margie too, we will see what we can do for Thursday. Got to work around everybody's appointments and got to make sure that there's a gold-class cinema somewhere so that I can wheel you both in and put your legs up. But we will get to go and see this thing, even if I've got to download it somewhere and bring a big screen to your place. We will watch it. Actually, I'm quite surprised that it hasn't been downloaded somewhere yet, and probably is available. One of you will send it to me overnight now. Contrib.vofhq.com. If you are just big files, can go there. Just saying, don't movies, but just saying big files can go there. Don't send that. We'll get in trouble. All right. Just scrolling down through the rest of it. Hello, Judith. Hello, Deb. I think I said g'day to Deb Shippard. And anybody I've missed, I'm very sorry. It is a big night tonight. I have a lot to tell you about. So it will be rather, I hope, enlightening, maybe a little interesting for you, maybe not. Here is a big thing, what is happening for our country. God love them. The Labor Party are pooing in very, very, very large volumes. The stack is high and it smells very, very bad. They are terrified of what's going on with One Nation. The polls came out over the weekend that now show Pauline Hanson is preferred Prime Minister. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's a surprise. Pauline's the preferred Prime Minister. And, of course, One Nation now leading the polls over Labor and what's loosely called the coalition, or what's left of it. Pauline's not holding back. One Nation turning Albo's lies into a full-blown campaign to fire the liar. We're now working on TV commercials for the state of origin and giant banners that will fly beneath helicopters across our major cities because of your donations. Your donations currently sit at just over $4 million, $4,129,563 to be exact. They're searching now for $4,300,000. That is the goal. I imagine when you wake up tomorrow morning, it'll be $4,400,000, because if people keep giving, they're going to keep raising it, and God love them for doing it. Now, I've shown you all of that. What they are spending the money on is things like this. So I have a question for you regarding One Nation. In fact, I've got a few of them this evening. Let's call it $4 million. Let's call it $4.5 million. That's not an insignificant amount of money. Now, we would have some questions, I would think, for One Nation regarding how they will manage money if they were to be given the honour, the privilege of leadership of this nation. We would want to know, are they good money managers, or are they the kind that, like Labor, will piss it up against a brick wall like a drunken sailor on leave? I think that this 4 point whatever it is, could be 5 million by the time they're done and won, could be an interesting gauge into what their money management skills are like. What are their priorities with it? How are they going to use this to better their fight going forward to an election to put themselves in a position to lead this nation? And Pauline came out today and said, well, we're going to spend some money. We're going to buy some State of Origin advertising spots. All right, well, I've done a little bit of looking up. So if you want to go and buy State of Origin television time on Channel 9 and whatever else it's streaming on, it'll only be sold as a package. And this is, ChatGPT's thing. So it's gone out and sourced all these figures. But I can tell you that that is a pretty fair deal for State of Origin Game 2 and Game 3, particularly if Game 3 is a decider. That price would probably get higher. So the audience you're going to show this is a very strong Queensland and very strong New South Wales audience. There will be a fairly strong Victorian audience because, let's face it, Victorians love their sport. Doesn't really matter who's playing it or why. And State of Origin has obviously been played in Victoria now for a few years. They've had, I'm not sure if it decided down there. I think they did have in the early days. But anyway, they've played a few games at the MCG. And obviously rugby league is getting bigger and wider and better known across the country. Is it a significant number of Victorians that would watch State of Origin? Don't know. Certainly in South Australia, less number, but certainly a significant number would watch it, and maybe in Western Australia too, just simply for the spectacle. It's all about how many people are going to see an ad. And I asked this to base this on buying a 30-second spot that would be played probably prior to the show, a 60-second spot played at halftime, and a 60-second spot played post-game. So that's how I've asked it to bill this. So 3 commercials in total, and we're looking, and look, if that was, like I say, to get to a decider at Game 3, you would be looking at something a lot more like $2 million per game, just about, I would say. It would go up significantly. So of the let's call it 4.5 million, let's call it 2 million of it is gone over 2 nights with Queensland winning State of Origin 2026. I say that because, well, it's going to happen. But I know there'll be all those cockroaches who think it's going to be different, but it won't be. I don't watch it anymore anyway. It's when you start to realize that it's just like the Colosseum, it's the bread and circuses argument, and demonstrated beautifully. But anyway, Pauline is also saying, look, what we're also going to do is we're going to buy a flag. In fact, we're going to get big flags, and we're going to get them so big they're going to fly under helicopters, and we're going to fly those helicopters around the capital cities of this nation. That's what they're going to do. So I thought I'd price that up. And turns out it's a reasonably expensive option to go doing that sort of thing. Once you've created the flag, now, depending on what capital city you're in, you're up for around about $2,000 an hour if you're in a helicopter, and sort of $1,000 an hour if you're in an aircraft. You have to get all sorts of permissions and permutations to be allowed to do all this. And then, of course, you've got to go and get the flag made. Now, the way that these flags are generally worked is a 30-metre wide, 15-metre high flag, if you like. Now, that gives you 450 square metres of sail area. And if you're in a helicopter, that's what you want to know about. Same for a light plane, because once it gets that big and the wind blows, the flag has the tendency to drag around whatever is towing it rather than the other way around. So that requires, bigger helicopters or bigger aircraft or all sorts of different things. But a general size flag is that size, 30-metre by 15 aerial flag. Pardon me, going to cost you about $60,000 and 8 weeks. 8 weeks to build. But if you want it rushed, and I've got to say, they're probably going to want it rushed. I mean, you'd want it rushed, wouldn't you? I'd want it rushed. They'll pay a premium for that. And wouldn't they want more than one? I would have thought so, because it's an expensive exercise to, fly a helicopter around to different sites. It's a less expensive exercise to truck your flag between capital cities, I guess. But you could lose the the timing and the significance by and the immediacy by not having it in the city at the time when there's a lot of people gathered around to see it for some reason. It turns up a few days afterwards. That's not useful. So what you would do is you'd have, well, minimum 2, but probably 3 you would buy at a cost of premium pricing, $80,000, let's call it, each, delivered inside 7 days or 8 days, so that you can arrange helicopters and permits and all that sort of stuff's got to be done too. But once you've got the sizes and the weights, that can all be done by the helicopter people you're going to employ or the plane people you're going to employ to fly it around. But already we have spent, call it 2.5 million, and I'm being generous, 2.5 million of the 4.5 million that they've currently raised. To what end? We're all going to see the sign. We're all going to wave that down, say, yes, that's fabulous. That's a really good thing. Go Pauline. Yay. Bring on the election. Bring on the election. Bring on the election. And there's so much of that happening right now. Bring on the election. Bring on the election. Bring on the election. Well, let's just think about that for a minute. One Nation have, for the longest time, been a bit like the dog that barks at the cars every day. A bit like the dog that chases the car up the road, yap, 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 until the car gets out of sight, and then comes home very proud that he's been able to make a great deal of noise, attract a bit of attention, warned everybody of the dangers, but, you know, ultimately didn't catch the car. And then one day they catch the car. So what happens to that dog when it catches the car? Well, sure enough, it wraps its teeth around it and it says, oh, I'm going to do great things with this car. I've stopped it. I've done all these. Well, maybe I'm just meant to bark. Maybe I'm not meant to bite. But, I'm going to give it another go. I'm going to give it another go. I'm going to give it another go. I fear, folks, that we might be cheering One Nation on to catch the car. I think this could be a really significant issue. Let me ask you this, and I've sent this question off to James Ashby today, the head of One Nation. I haven't had a reply. Not that I would expect one, let's be honest. But the question I would ask him is a pretty serious question. What will you do if Albo and his sleazeball bunch of criminals decide to call an election tomorrow and they give you 4 weeks' notice? Because that's all they have to. And yes, they can call an election tomorrow if they want. What would that do? Well, great. We're going to get a chance to get rid of One Nation. Wow. Not One Nation, Labor Party. Well, are we? Because what it would do is put a huge time crunch on One Nation. Have you nominated to be a candidate? Have you thought about being a candidate for One Nation in your area? Are there candidates already standing in your area? And I believe there are many of them. Well, I tell you, folks, I'm sounding the warning bell tonight. If that's you, if you feel that, oh, yeah, look, I could do better, I'm not a corrupt individual. If you know you live in honor and you want the best, not just for your people, your electorate, but you have a bigger picture for the betterment of Australia, then I urge you, if you haven't done so already, go and nominate yourself at the One Nation website to become a candidate. Get in the line now. Because I fear, I don't know, but I fear One Nation are the dog that caught the car. And now the car is going to run right over the dog with an election. Because if One Nation, who are you going to vote for? Right now, with Pauline as popular as she is, with One Nation as popular as it is, who are you going to vote for in 4 weeks' time? If an election was called tomorrow, who would you vote for? And the answer is, unless you're one of the lucky few, you haven't got a One Nation candidate to vote for as much as you might want to. Now, I really thought long and hard about speaking about this tonight, and we'll see how long it takes for the mainstream media to pick it up, or maybe this will just be suppressed because they don't want Labor getting the ideas. Do you think anybody in Labor could have thought of that? I'm bloody sure they'd have called an election last night if they had of. It's a big risk for them, for sure, but at the moment, what sort of pressure does it put on One Nation to field a full set of candidates? They've said they're going to run full set right across the board, lower and upper house. Have all those candidates been agreed on yet? Do they even have a candidate for every seat that's available? How far into the security checks and the backgrounding on each of those candidates is One Nation? And how much government compliance, of bureaucratic compliance I'm talking about here, things like a security check to get a blue card, to be able to go and transport kids around in your limo took a month or more. If you wanted a gun license, that police check, every state, and I'd imagine they'd be doing it every state for their politicians, because, crooked people move interstate and commit crimes. We don't want to be letting one who moved from Western Australia to the East Coast or vice versa get into the mix. How do One Nation make sure they're not putting the wrong people in? Well, they've got the luxury at the moment of 2 years to try and get their candidates in a row, so to speak. But what if, and just think about it, Labor could turn this around tomorrow. They could come out and say, oh, yes, we're going to have an election because you, the people, demanded it. You said we couldn't change the laws without taking it to an election. So that's what we're doing. Yay! That's what you'll get out of him, the mealy-mouthed fuck muppet. And that's what we'll end up with. Because if they were to win that election, folks, they would take it as a mandate to keep doing to the country what they're doing to the country. And that's Roger in the ring out of it. So I would urge One Nation really hard to get on to their candidates and their registration process, and more particularly their backgrounding process. I don't think you can get onto it fast enough. And I would urge you, dear folk watching, because we need good people, and you identify as good people. I know you do. Many of you. Many of you are retired. Many of you have skills that could be brought to bear here to help One Nation, to help this nation. And let's just say for a minute that there is an election held. Doesn't have to be in 4 weeks' time. Let's call it down the track. Once again, One Nation will be called upon to explain not just their policies, but who will lead the ministry, or who will be the Minister for the Treasury. Who will be the Minister for Defence? Who will be the Minister for Foreign Affairs? Who will be the Minister for Social Services? Who will be the person overseeing the bureaucracy? We need to know those sorts of people. And let's be honest, it's going to be a hard sell regardless of how many good people like you are joining up. It's going to be a hard sell to convince the nation that you're all the best people for those sorts of jobs. But what about if One Nation were to say to, I don't know, Alex Antic, maybe Babbitt, maybe, I would like to see Gerard Rennick not necessarily given a seat in Parliament. I would like to see him given some sort of oversight of the Treasury Department. I would like to see him potentially put in charge of a group of we the people who sit in things like Senate estimates. And when the smug bastards, be them the shiny bum bureaucrat or the deftly truffle-fed minister who smugly, glibly offers up a bullshit answer to a very serious question, or when the bureaucrats obfuscate and try and hide facts, real facts, that would show the truth to their lies. When that sort of thing happens, there needs to be a consequence. Now, I asked that of Malcolm Roberts when he came on the show once. What consequence is there? And he said, oh, yeah, there's consequences, but there's not. Well, yeah, there's not. There needs to be. Those bureaucrats, when they are brought forward and they obfuscate, when they are proven to be lying, oh, you can't say liar. That's a strong term. Well, you can say liar. When they've been proven to be lying, or when they say, oh, we don't have we'll have to take that on notice. Oh, we'll have to take that on notice. Oh, we'll have to take that on notice. Well, okay, we're going to schedule another day tomorrow, if it's late in the afternoon or later on. We're going to schedule another day at the cost of you and your wage, your department, and everything else. So you can bring those answers back if you can't get them to us today. These people have minions in their office. They can pick up the phone and have any one of 150 people find whatever is required. The reason that they want to answer with questions on notice is because they can't be expected to remember and know everything. And no, they can't. But the reason that we have a bureaucracy that is filled with numpties is so that you can order them around to get whatever information, factual information, those people in Senate estimates require. And when you can't, then I believe you should be going to the jail until it turns up. There needs to be a consequence for these people. At the moment, all they get is a fucking pay rise. It has to stop. So I'm keen to see what One Nation would do in that regard, because there is a lot of experience floating around in certain parts of the coalition, I guess, the Liberal National Party, that must, in my estimation at this time, must be considered as potential ministerial material under something led by One Nation going forward. Because right now, who you gonna vote for? You can't vote for One Nation, odds are, because right now they haven't got someone in your seat. And odds are they're not going to have someone in your seat anytime soon. I'm sure they're working on it, but it's a huge job. How long did it take? How long did it take those of you who wanted to join Australia One, Ricardo's party? How long did that take to get his security check done? Can you imagine what it would be like when you have, well, volunteers? I suppose they're going to have to ask to help, but there's only so far you can shuffle these bits of paper before it goes into the governmental system, and they're police checks that are being done. So there's not too many volunteers that can help with that. And then, of course, there's the security of all of that data and all of that information and who's going to give it up and yada, 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 yada. But you must, if you have thought about it and not actioned it, you must go and nominate yourself as a candidate right now. Put me up as I told you to, somewhere in the notes section. I don't think they'll give you a discount, but you can try. You can find all that information on their One Nation website. And you can find out everything from how to be a volunteer to how to be a candidate. And all they require is you to fill in the blanks initially. So why don't you do it? Because they're going to need good people. They're going to need good people. And right now, I don't know how many they've got sitting in the background waiting, but I know they don't have enough. They really don't have anywhere near enough. And so rather than being the dog that catches the car and thinks, oh, shit, and you wind up losing all your teeth, let's make sure that we can do something that's a little more real about it all. It'd be a shame to lose this tidal wave of momentum that One Nation have, because while we are all thrilled at their success and praying fervently that they will string Albo and his cohort up from the nearest light pole when the criminals, the criminality is shown true light, right now, they don't have enough people to win shit in either house. And if the Labor Party decided to call an election tomorrow, we could wind up with them in power for the next 4 years again. Only this time they would take it as they had a mandate to change all of those tax laws that everybody's so upset about, and all the gun laws and everything else they're trying to ram through while running like scared rabbits at the moment. I consider this to be a really concerning turn, folks. And maybe, I don't know whether or not One Nation monitor me in any way, shape or form, but I really hope that at some point somebody sends that bit to them, because it is a question they are going to need to face, and face very soon. All right, now, Steven Spielberg. Interesting man. We've talked about the movie. I haven't been to see the movie. I know a few of you have, and thank you for not sharing any details with me. I know a couple of you have got notes you've taken and all sorts of stuff, so we will get down and talk about it just as soon as I get to see it. But Spielberg, as it turns out, has been much closer, I believe, involved with a few of the secretive things in the world than I was maybe initially believing. Now, in 1981, the world changed somewhat. We went from large rockets firing, 2 or 3 blokes into space to something called a shuttle, a space shuttle, where we could take, I think it was up to 11 people and a much bigger payload and a whole heap of other things up into space. We could take satellites up and launch them from out of there. They had a big robotic arm that came out of the thing. It was all very exciting. And back in 1981, the very first space shuttle launch was happening. And, of course, at NASA, it was a very, very big day. Lots of famous people turned up. Now, have a listen to this question and the answer that Spielberg
Is there things you've seen here that's going to maybe influence what you do in the films in the future?
Well, I think what's really influential here is the enthusiasm. It's really great to know that there are so many people who believe in getting off Earth for various scientific or even fantasy reasons, and it reinforces my belief in science fiction even more.
Okay. Here's the question again.
Is there things you've seen here that's going to maybe influence what you do in the films in the future?
If you're seeing things here that will maybe influence what you'll do in movies in the future, films in the future, here's his answer.
Well, I think what's really influential here is the enthusiasm. It's really great to know that there are so many people who believe in getting off Earth for various scientific or even fantasy reasons, and it reinforces my belief in science fiction even more.
Okay. Does that make sense to you? Let's break it down.
I think what's really influential here is the enthusiasm.
So he's immediately changed the premise of the
Is there
question.
things you've seen here that's going to maybe influence what you do in the films in the future?
Have you seen anything here that's going to influence what you might do in the films in the future?
Well, I think what's really influential here is the enthusiasm.
So what's influential is seeing the enthusiasm, the excitement that people have. What do they have excitement for?
It's really great to know that there are so many people who believe in getting off Earth for various scientific or even fantasy reasons. And
I'm enthusiastic because there are so many people here that believe that people can get off the Earth.
And it reinforces my belief in science fiction even more.
And it reinforces his belief in science fiction even more. That people will believe that you can get off the Earth like that. Am I reading too much into that? I don't know. Have a
Is there
listen
things
to
you've
it
seen
all.
here that's going to maybe influence what you do in the films in the future?
Well, I think what's really influential here is the enthusiasm. It's really great to know that there are so many people who believe in getting off Earth for various scientific or even fantasy reasons. And it reinforces my belief in science fiction even more.
I'm enthusiastic that they believe they can get off the Earth, and it reinforces my belief in science fiction even more. Take that what you will. But in this time of disclosure, there is a great deal of it going on in America at the moment. Must be something to do with the 250th birthday celebrations. But last week, a fellow by the name of David Grolsch, who has been a whistleblower in what is becoming known as a legacy retrieval program, where alien ships and aliens indeed themselves have been recovered. He has spoken out, and he did a global exclusive with Australian Ross Coulthard a couple of years ago now, in 2023, I want to say. Since that time, he has come out and been working with Congress. He is working with a number of the congressmen, making sure they ask the right questions in recent hearings about UFOs. And last week they had another hearing, and another tranche of very interesting, I must say, videos were released. But it's what he said outside the Congress at a press gathering that I found pretty interesting, when he was asked about the different forms that these extraterrestrials had taken.
I certainly don't have the compendium. It's a continuum from corporeal, bipedal type life to, what I would consider like sentient plasmoid life. But there are several that the U.S. government is aware of.
So that moment, it was
Sentient plasmoid life. More to come, though. Before he walked off stage, this.
And I also, there is a declassified 1971 Australian formally classified secret assessment that a couple years ago was put in the Australian National Archives. I encourage people to read page 7 through 16, and that was the nuclear branch chief of the Australian government discussing the U.S. cover-up and the involvement of the CIA back in the 70s. And that's actually a little-known document that is publicly available.
Publicly available it is. Here's it. And Vince will be uploading it to the VOFHQ website right now. So if you would like to download it and have a read yourself, but right now I'll read a bit of it to you. Now, I'm not going to tempt myself with a lot of this handwriting, although now that I've blown it up, it's much easier to read. But these are just notes that have been handed down and made over the top of what was already in the file. It is all summarized when you get to this next page. Yeah. And I'll read a bit of it for you. But I must say, folks, this is an enlightening, very enlightening document. Now, this is obviously prepared by somebody in the Australian Intelligence Services, and it's prepared as an overview of what the Americans are doing regarding UFOs, and it explains what's going on with Australians as well and the general way the world is treating this thing. This is dating back to 1947, and this document itself, I think, is 70, I want to say, but it refers to a lot of things that happened back in the 50s. So bear with us, but if you want to go and download it yourself, you can get it at vofhq.com and enjoy the read. And while you're there, you could check out our merch site, merch.vofhq.com, maybe buy a hat or a wind cheater, or if you just want to leave a donation, buy us a cup of coffee. That would be awesome. It'll give you a little bit of something to read while we have a coffee. Anyway, let's get into it. The early analysis of UFO reports by US Air Force intelligence indicated that real phenomena were being reported which had flight characteristics so far in advance of US aircraft that only an extraterrestrial origin could be envisaged. A government agency, which later events indicated to be the CIA Office of Scientific Intelligence, or OSI, studied the UFO reports with the intention of determining the UFO propulsion methods. At that time, OSI was responsible for intelligence on foreign research and development in nuclear and missile matters. The CIA became alarmed at the overloading of military communications during the mass sightings of 1952 and considered the possibility that the USSR may take advantage of such a situation. As a result, OSI, acting through the Robertson Panel meeting of mid-January 1953, persuaded the US Air Force to use Project Blue Book as a means of publicly debunking UFOs, and at a latter stage to allocate funds for the Avro Advanced Saucer aircraft and the launching of a crash program into anti-gravity power. To initiate such programs decades ahead of normal scientific development would indicate that the US government acknowledged the existence of advanced aircraft which presumably used a gravity control method of propulsion. An additional motivation could have been the fear that the USSR could achieve this goal before the US. By erecting a facade of ridicule, the US hoped to allay public alarm, reduce the possibility of the Soviet taking advantage of UFO mass sightings for either psychological or actual warfare purposes, and act as a cover for the real US program of developing vehicles that emulate UFO performances. The RAAF, together with other countries of the world, give credence only to the US Air Force public facade and appear to have uncritically accepted the associated information. Do you understand that bit? The RAAF, the Royal Australian Air Force, together with many other countries of the world, give credence only to the US Air Force public facade and appear to have uncritically accepted the associated information. This information has only been widely discredited by retiring US service personnel formerly engaged on US UFO investigations, as well as by scientists and private citizens. The conclusions of the Condon report conflict with its own contents and has been discredited by many reputable scientists, including the UFO scientific consultant to the US Air Force. In accordance with the recommendations of the Condon report, Project Blue Book was terminated, but presumably this would have little effect on the main program. It would appear wrong for Australia to remain ignorant of the true situation. We lack an intelligence viewpoint that can assess the nature and possible consequences of the problem, a scientific viewpoint that could derive scientifically valid data from the reports, and a public relations viewpoint that can honestly satisfy public interest. To overcome these deficiencies in the Australian investigation of UFOs, it would seem that a strong case exists for the acceptance of the RAAF suggestion that another government department assume responsibility for the investigation and analysis of UFO reports, meaning that's a hot potato the RAAF didn't want. In June of 1947, the Air Technical Intelligence Center, or ATIC, near Dayton, Ohio, assumed a responsibility to investigate the initial reports of flying saucers. Within a month, it was considered that the phenomenon were real and probably of Soviet origin. By the end of the year, when ATIC was officially authorized to investigate under the project codename of SIGN, and with a high priority, most of the investigators were focusing on an interplanetary rather than a Soviet origin. These opinions were crystallized into a written estimate that was sent to the Pentagon in September of 1948. When the interplanetary conclusions were rejected on the grounds of insufficient hard evidence, a reaction set in at ATIC against trying to unravel the UFO problem. In February 1949, ATIC personnel on Project SIGN were replaced with new personnel to form Project Grudge. A definite attempt was made during 1949 to use Project Grudge to destroy any acceptance of UFOs. The motives for this are not clear. Possibly Air Force embarrassment at being incapable of controlling the situation and/or fear of national panic prompted US Air Force to try and remove the problem by denying its existence. Another possible motive may have been to provide a breathing space for another investigative agency to reach some conclusion. The agency had been assisting ATIC throughout 1948 and, contrary to official US Air Force policy, was maintaining a high level of interest during 1949. This governmental agency was not the FBI and had rocket, nuclear, and intelligence experts. Their purpose was to study UFO reports in an effort to gather design data on interplanetary spaceships. In the light of latter developments, this agency was almost certainly the CIA. That paragraph, folks, if you hadn't cottoned onto it and the one before it, is specifically referring to a time after Roswell. So this is when UFOs, if you like, were, I guess, almost confirmed totally, but it's referring to that time. Project Grudge failed to eliminate the UFO problem. UFO reports in 1949 actually exceeded the number in 1948, and several people who had gained access to earlier official reports were able to contradict the US Air Force. Journalists generally felt that Grudge reporting represented a cover to a more serious knowledge. Eventually, US Air Force intelligence decided that a fresh approach to the problem was necessary. Between September 1951 and the establishment of Project Blue Book in March 1952, UFO investigation regained adequate financial and administrative support to once again analyze the collected data. Project Blue Book was able to process the data from 3,200 reports into a form suitable for their consultants to be able to use an IBM card sorting machine. The summer of 1952 saw a more than 20-fold rise in the normal rate of reporting and included the two extensive July sightings involving Washington, D.C. This marked increase in sightings had diverse effects. A component of US Air Force intelligence considered that UFOs were interplanetary spaceships which were about to make closer contact. To prepare the public for this possibility, 41 previously classified reports were released for publication between August 52 and February 1953. These reports contradicted the earlier official US Air Force policy of dismissing the reports as misidentifications, etc. On the other hand, the CIA regarded the summer UFO activity as a threat to national security, mainly because the resulting crowded communications and defense forces involvement lessened the level of national alertness against possible enemy attack. A scientific panel chaired by H.P. Robertson was convened by the Office of Scientific Intelligence of CIA during mid-January of 1953 for the purpose of recommending future action on the UFO problem. Briefings were made both by the CIA and US Air Force. ATIC personnel showed the then classified 2 films of UFOs and the early results of statistical analysis of 3,200 reports. Because of the vital issues involved, the panel felt restricted to recommending that the investigation be continued, but with increased personnel and equipment. The US Air Force responded promptly with an instruction to comply with these recommendations. The CIA, however, in a report dated 16th of February 1953, showed a preference to publicly abandon the investigation whilst intensifying the collection of data. By September 53, the CIA position had been largely achieved, with Project Book reduced from a staff of 10 qualified personnel operating at a top secret level to a virtually inactive project involving one airman. The investigating component had been transferred to the 460 Air Intelligence Service Squadron, which was trained in rapid intelligence procurement and reported to Air Defense Command and U.S. Air Force Intelligence Washington rather than Blue Book. Direct access between the 4602 and ASISS is all U.S. Air Force units was authorized by this code, whereas previously this privilege had been given to Blue Book. Although only the airman, first class, remained in September 43, Blue Book was later built up to one officer, one sergeant, one secretary, and a part-time consultant. Dr. J. Allen Hynek staying at about this level until it was closed down in December 1967. During this time, Blue Book served mainly as a means of supplying unclassified summaries of UFO identifications to the public and did not form a vital link in collection or serious analysis. Control of public awareness of the UFO situation was tightened by the issuing of JNAP 146 in 1953, which prohibited service personnel from discussing UFOs by threatening defaulters with up to 10 years jail and up to a $10,000 fine. When service personnel resigned or retired, however, it was possible to reveal US Air Force attitudes and opinions, even if actual data was still restricted. In this way, many intelligence officers associated with the UFO problem, including Major D. Fournette, who was Project Blue Book project officer at the Pentagon until late 1952, Captain E. Ruppelt, who headed the Project Grudge and Project Blue Book until September 53, and Admiral Hillenkoetter, who directed the CIA from its inception until October of 1950, on retiring from the services, all publicly stated that the US government knew UFOs were extraterrestrial, but was withholding this fact from the public. When the National Investigation Committee on Aerial Phenomenon, or NICAP, was formed in 1956 to counter the publicity-suppressed US Air Force investigation of UFOs, the first chairman was Admiral D.S. Farney, who had directed the Navy's guided missile program from its inception. Apart from Admiral Hillenkoetter, Major Kehoe, and Major Fournette, other directors have included, quite a few others. To reduce the effect of these and similar defections from official policy after retirement, the revised JNAP 146E passed in 1960 and made it an offence under the Espionage Act if data on UFOs were revealed. The change of style of US Air Force reporting before and after the Robertson panel meeting is clearly indicated on the Project Blue Book Special Report number 14. The body of the report, prepared between March 52 and early 53, although biased in favour of a natural explanation for UFOs, nevertheless showed mathematically that the evidence favoured an explanation that was scientifically unknown. This section of the 316-page report was not released to the public other than a copy to be consulted, assuming the reader knew of its existence. Public distribution was made, however, of a so-called summary, which in fact did not summarize, nor scarcely allude to the 1947-52 data at all, but concentrated on the 53 to 55 reporting, which was clearly designed to reduce the residual unknowns to an insignificant number, no matter how senseless the identification became. This is where it gets a bit interesting. Within the body of difficult-to-obtain report, there is an interesting diagram. The product of the estimated observer reliability and the report reliability became the sighting reliability. The percentage of reports that had to be registered as unknown, i.e. incapable of being even approximately identified as a known object, increased as the sighting reliability improved. Conversely, the percentage listed as insufficient information decreased with improving reliability. And I'll get you to have a look at the excellent number. I guess you'll figure that in the unknown mode for yourself. But throughout the years of the UFO phenomenon, there has been a persistent form of official pronouncements which state that the percentage of unknowns would be reduced if more data were available. The above table contradicts that statement. Reports of excellent reliability generally stem from astronomers, pilots, scientists, surveyors, meteorologists, radar operators, etc., complete with instrumented values and accurately detailed accounts. The introduction of good, reliable reporting prevents the ready prosaic interpretation. In all probability, the overall average percentage of unknowns, 19.7%, would have been substantially increased if the data had been more reliable. Project Blue Book consultants statistically tested the unknown object population to determine the likelihood that it was similar to the population of identified objects and found that the probability was less than 1 in 10 to 28. Using the American system, the odds were 10,000 trillion to 1 against the unknowns being the same as the knowns. Who would have guessed? Since the consultants had arbitrarily called all green fireballs and short duration, i.e. less than 5 seconds, nighttime sightings as known astronomical objects. So they called these green fireballs and anything that lasted less than 5 seconds a known astronomical object. There was an undue preponderance in that category. Hence, assuming that no astronomical objects were left in the unknowns, the statistical tests were repeated with astronomical identifications removed. The odds were reduced to 10 trillion to 1, which is a lot less than the other one. The analysis could not find a way to reduce those odds sufficiently further to warrant additional testing and irrationally considered the results to be inconclusive. While Project Blue Book, you get it eventually, Carl, endeavoured to reduce the official number of unknowns, in 1957 they claimed only 14 out of 1,006 sightings remained unidentified. The covert program expanded considerably. The government agency, most certainly the CIA, that had been collecting data on UFO performances and propulsion methods during 1948 to 1952, presumably influenced US governmental funding of certain advanced projects. One project was the Canadian Avro saucer. A drawing of this saucer was released in October 1955, showed a typical flying disc as described in many UFO reports. The Secretary of the Air Force, D.A. Qualls, appeared moderately confident that such a vehicle would be successfully developed by the US. A more astounding decision on the part of the US government was to allocate considerable funds to investigate gravity and a means of controlling gravity, despite the fact that science had not attained a level of competence to deal with either gravity or anti-gravity problems, and the only theory that might be applicable was Einstein's unified field theory, which was still incomplete at the time of his death. The US chose to support 6 universities and government agencies in an all-out drive to conquer the problem. At this significant that at this time the current theories on UFO propulsion were a mixture of gravity control and electromagnetic propulsion. Oops, wrong one. During 1955, because insufficient staff could be recruited for the project, recourse was made to an urgent appeal for theoretical physicists and mathematicians from the UK. The 6 gravity research centres being established were at the Institute for Advanced Study at Princeton University, New Jersey, the University of Indiana, Purdue University Research Foundation, the University of North Carolina, and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, or MIT, as many people know it. This was done through Roger Babson Gravity Research Institute, New Boston, and the latter institute is a non-profit organisation founded by whoever for whatever reason. it was believed that to make a gravity motor, a gravity differential was required, which necessitated the discovery of an insulator, a deflector, or an absorber of gravity. By 1955, 485 essays had been written on the subject, and awards totaling $10,800 had been made for original contributions. Look, it does go on. I have read enough to get you interested or bored the shit out of you, depending on which way you want to look at it. But you can go and read the rest of it yourself at vofhq.com. And if you like it that much, you can download it. We would love to have you check it out. Isn't there a link between the sightings and the nuke experiments? So, yeah, yes and no. Yes, there is. There is a link certainly between UFOs and I think there have been a number of, back in the 50s, interactions with UFOs essentially killing intercontinental ballistic missiles with nuclear weapons on them, whether they were being fired in anger or by accident or as a test. There is certainly some vision that has been released some time ago now showing one of these crafts beaming in, coming in from the side, spinning around, going to very precise points, firing something at the head of this missile and then flying away. And this missile just breaks up afterwards. So that is rather interesting. And I've got to say, there is another one that was shown in the testimony during last week's hearing, UFO hearing in the US Congress. It was shown more than once. It was a fairly significant, if worrying, bit of video for anybody in the military. It was video tracking a UAP, UFO, whatever you want to call it. It was flying over water. It was traveling at a pretty rapid clip. It looked to be a orb kind of arrangement. The platform that it was being filmed from was one of the US armed drones, an MQ-9, and there was a second MQ-9 that was targeting this thing as it was going across the ocean. Now, it fired a Hellfire missile at this target. It locked on, and in the vision that they played in the Congress, you can see this missile come in from the side and hit the UFO. It appears it breaks off some pieces of it, but those pieces keep following it. It doesn't bring it down. It doesn't slow it down. It didn't do anything. And maybe those pieces are just what's left of the rocket. It didn't do any damage to the UAP in any way, shape, or form. I have been looking to try and get that vision and show it to you again. But I'll be honest, I was a bit crook over the weekend and I had to go back through what is, I think, a 9-hour Congress session to try and find a very, very short bit of video. It's like 35 seconds long. So I will attempt to find it and show it to you. But, yeah, it's pretty wild. It's called a force field, says Vince. Yes, probably could be a force field, couldn't it? There's certainly something working around there. Before I go tonight, there are 3 things that I want to show you. 2 of them should make you very, very angry. Now, this is...
I'm going to get your child.
Now watch this copper on the left.
You're on camera, mate. You're all on camera. Oi!
Right, punch in the face. Thanks very much. He didn't look like he was resisting too much. Here's another one. Have a look at it. So, if you're in any doubt, that bloke got thrown into one of those bollards on the side of the road head first by that copper. And, of course, the previous one, the child stealers were doing their best, and the bloke on the ground, who might have been offering a mouthful of abuse but was trussed up like your Sunday chook, he wasn't going anywhere, and yet the copper on top of him decided to give him a punch in the face. This is Britain, obviously, in today's world, but it is also any police force here in Australia. And we have demonstrated that many times with the police in Victoria, New South Wales, Western Australia, South Australia and Queensland, and I dare say the Northern Territory as well. So sometimes people deserve a good flogging, but is it the policeman's right to give it? No, that isn't the case. And all too often we have seen in instances like you're seeing there where that gentleman is thrown, cast around by a copper who I'm sure probably didn't mean to throw him headfirst into a bollard and do God knows what kind of damage to that man's bonds. But he didn't get up. Did you notice that? He was on the ground, not getting up, unconscious, God knows what sort of brain injury. Remember the one punch rule, folks. One punch. Well, that copper's wrapped both arms around this fella and slung him with great force and furious intensity to the ground, hitting his head on one of those metal bollards on the way past. Does it not smack of something that happened to some poor soul in Melbourne who was having a reasonable conversation with police when another one rushed up from behind him, grabbed him from behind, pinned his arms to his side, and then threw him to the cement floor of Flinders Street Station, giving this man what turned out to be lifelong injuries in a greatly shortened life, shattered his skull, did all sorts of brain injury shit to this man who, after he eventually got out of hospital, I think after 6 or 8 months, he took his own life. That's my understanding of it. So what do we do about those police? Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much for your super chat. What do we do about that? Well, I think there is one way that we could fix police aggression, overexuberance, abuse. There is one way that we could change that today, and that is to remove from the police their public immunity. They believe they can do anything and get away with it. They believe they are protected. Thanks, Tony. He died a year later. Yeah. Not sure he killed himself. I think he just died. He'd given up on life. The poor man was literally drinking through a straw, and that was how he was going to spend the rest of his life, I think. It was just horrendous. Did that copper go to court? Yes, he did. Did he go to jail? No, he didn't. He got off. No, how on earth any judge, well, we know how a judge would find it. A jury wouldn't, but this wouldn't have been a jury trial. The cops wouldn't have wanted that. They would have wanted a bench trial so that they could get the judge to agree that, no, the copper just acted that way. Doesn't need to have any due care about them. Fling people to the ground, give them skull fractures that lead to diminished life and eventually death, and get away with it. Our police need to have that immunity removed from them. And then, and only then, can it be applied when a circumstance arises, like you need to take somebody out. You don't have your taser or your baton or your gun. You have to run up behind them and grab them where they can't, hold themselves or protect themselves as they're falling down, and you have to fling them head first into the ground. Then you better be able to stand up in that court and explain exactly why you couldn't use the taser or your mate's taser or one of the other 15 coppers who's standing around you holding a taser, why it took you, one man against 15 others, to grab a hold of this fella. And okay, he was putting up, he was resisting, but did you need to upend him like you're a WWE bloody fighter and scon him to a point where he may now dribble for the rest of his life when he asks for tea? What consequence is there for that police officer? Absolutely none right now. But remove that immunity and say, well, hang on a minute. that officer, that needs to come before our court and before the people to say, hang on, is that fair? Is that just? Is that lawful? Then we'll have a police force worth working for. Then we'll have a police force we can trust in and believe. Then they'll police themselves. They will work with honour, and they will push out those who don't. The sooner, the better. And speaking of sooner the better, we've been waiting a long time for this. Donald Trump has put up a huge event over the weekend. Travis Pastrana and four of his mates have gone back flipping over the south lawn of the White House in front of a screen, like big TV screen, that was projecting the front of the White House. I don't understand why they just didn't put the screen down so you could see the front of the house. But anyway, they did that on Saturday. Then the good Lord opened up the heavens overnight in Washington. Huge storm, massive storm, everything delayed for an hour and a half, or an hour. Anyway, I tried watching it in the supposed time it was meant to be on, and all the feed I got was, oh, sorry, the Octagon is now closed. But thankfully, somebody sent me this. Now, this was a podcast that was doing a commentary on the stream of the fights. Now, this is what happened when the winner of one of those fights, a guy called Josh Hogan, got a hold of the microphone and got to say nice things. He calls out, the first thing you hear with the guy on the, let's call it the Octagon mic, is him calling out another fighter, Alex Pereira. So wants to have a fight with him. You'll hear another couple of voices chime in over the top, and then you'll hear what Josh Hogan let go in the middle of the UFC's greatest ever global audience, live from the White House front lawn.
Alex Pereira! Okay, he's going to say it right here. I want to record this though, guys. They said boo. All right, here it is. Shh.
Michelle Obama is a man. Am I right, America? Ladies and gentlemen, Josh
Hogan. Michelle Obama is a man. Ain't I right, America?
Alex Pereira.
Okay, he's going to say it right here. I want to record this though, guys. They said boo. All right, here it is. Shh.
Michelle Obama is a man. Am I right, America?
Now watch here. Watch Trump. He's right behind everybody here. I don't know. Was he just being a bit polite? No. What did that guy say? Anyway, I thought that was bloody hilarious. And let's face it, after seeing what those coppers are doing in the UK and other places, we needed a bit of a laugh to end off the day. So on that note, file closed. Always like it when you get a top secret file jacket front and back. I'm going to find somewhere to use that, have no doubt. And I'd be interested in your thoughts on what you think about what Steven Spielberg knew back in 1981 and whether or not he might know a little bit more about what's above us, bearing in mind that he has never, ever made a movie where we have gone outside off Earth to find an alien. All the movies that he's made have been with the aliens coming here on Earth. Just something I'm saying's worth pointing out. Love to hear your thoughts. Beware of the dickheads, folks. Tonight, I may have been the leader.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back.
Does anybody else want to stay?
Let's ride!
So just before you go, there's one thing I wanted to point out that I've forgotten. I've just seen the slide. Over the weekend, something tragic happened in Sydney at Coogee Bay. A lady was mauled by a shark. She's lost an arm and part of a leg out of it. And, of course, the news were all over it. There were people out there with cameras and video cameras, and more particularly there were drones. And you can always be guaranteed that the news organizations, folks, are always checking their stories. They're always making sure that they've got everything right. Here is a picture, as you can see here, drone footage captured by One Shot Creative of the shark off Coogee Beach. What do you notice about that shark, folks? Do you notice it's a dolphin? It's a dolphin. Idiots, dickheads, surrounded by them, folks. Have yourself a bloody good night tonight, and we shall chat again tomorrow. Good night. I'm going.